Yeah, welcome to the Bleeding Keyboard. With me today, I have phenomenal author Dave McCluskey.
Let's go.
So, Dave, to start us off with, which genre do you write in, and how do you define that genre?
Right. Okay. Well, I write. Oh, that's a good question. It's a really tough question to start the interview with. That,
Isn't it just? Yeah.
Isn't it? Right. I write in. I'll mostly write in horror.
Right.
Okay. I'll say mostly because I write children's books. I write thrillers. I write historical thrillers. I write psychological thrillers. I've even wrote a romance book. But mostly I write in horror. And how do you define horror? Is it the little tingle that you get on the back of your neck when you're in on your own and you hear a noise upstairs and you think to yourself, shit? Or when the dog starts barking at the door when there's nobody there, and like the staring and the shaking, horror's not defined. I don't think you can define horror, because I mean some people find horror in going out and buying Christmas presents for people that they don't really know that well. That's horror to some people. Yeah. Other people is like when you go out to buy Christmas presents and you get attacked by zombies that are dressed like Father Christmas. There you go. That's the type of thing.
I'm writing that down as a plot idea, actually.
I want a credit.
Definitely, yeah. I'll even name one of them after you. I agree with what you're saying there, but this is almost as though we're discussing conflict, isn't it? Whereas we sort of like need conflict in every story. So you have a romance where it's in a heteronormative romance, it's boy meets girl, and it's sort of like will they, won't they? And it's the horror of they might not. So it's almost as though horror is in every genre that we look at.
Horror is everywhere. Horror is all around you, because I mean, making the wrong decision, making a bad decision, maybe not necessarily the wrong decision, but making a bad decision. And as you say, it is the conflict. It's the horror is unknown. It's the unknown. It's the what might happen or what could happen, or what did happen because you made that decision, and you think to yourself, if I made that decision differently, would that have been in a different? So it is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere.
I think you're right, and I think an awful lot of people just associate horror with being, it's blood, guts, and gore.
Or and monsters and
which it can be. There's nothing against monsters and nothing against blood, guts, and gore, but it's an awful lot of that. Awesome stuff. So, what's your writing schedule?
You're not doing me any favors here, Ash. I'm an early riser.
Right.
5 o'clock. My body wakes me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm out of bed most days by 5:30. By the time I've walked the dog and had a shower and this, that, and the other, I'm normally sat down writing at 6:30 in the morning. Sometimes earlier, sometimes a little bit later. But I'm lucky in the fact that like my absolutely horrific 9-to-5 job that I have to do to pay the mounting tax bills, I was going to say, the mounting gas bills and electricity bills, that allows me to work from home. I'm working from home permanently. So my commute to work is at 8:30. I'll finish. I'll move my work laptop to one side and I'll put my other work laptop on, and there's my commute. So I'm lucky enough to actually be able to get two and a half hours in the morning and then I snatch half an hour here and then I'm 15 minutes there through the day. Because of like if there's a little bit of downtime, or if you're in a meeting and you're like, I'll go to that meeting, put the meeting on mute, and they just get my laptop out and do some writing. Let's just hope that no one who knows me is listening to this.
Have you ever had it where you've put people on mute, or you've just sort of like got into something and then you can hear them shouting your name because they want?
Oh yeah. Well, there's another definition of horror.
Yeah.
What do you think of that, Dave? Well, yeah, I agree with that, fella. Yeah. But I'm lucky that I'm a fast writer, so I can actually write a book faster than I can read a book these days. It's a crazy situation, but it's probably because I spend more time writing them than I do reading them these days. But so because I'm a fast writer, so I can get if I catch them 10, 15 minutes and half an hour's here, there and everywhere, I can actually get quite a bit done. So I'm lucky. But by 8 o'clock, done. I'm not doing anything creative after 8 o'clock. My brain's frazzled. I've been writing all day. I've been doing me silly work all day. The kids are back from school and work, and the missus is back, and she wants me to cook dinner, and she wants me to make sweet, sweet love to her and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? So I'm knackered after 8 o'clock.
The half-hour and 15-minute sessions that you manage. How productive are they, and how difficult is it to go from sort of like, I mean, my 9 to 5 work set here, I've got 15 minutes. So is it easy to switch like that, or?
For some reason, I've always been able to do it. I don't know how. Don't ask me how. People say, how do you do that? But my brain must be hardwired or decompartmentalized, or I can't even talk today.
It's compartmentalization. You're a psychopath. Yeah, this is what's
happening. Yeah, there you go. So I can just go, and I'm in my world, and then click, and I'm back in the depressing world of my 9 to 5, which I won't disclose what I do to people because I just bore them to death.
But yeah, that's one hell of a. So is that something that you've been able to do sort of like from when you first started writing, or is it a trick that you've been able to learn?
Yeah. Well, I used to work in an IT department. I was like third line technical support in an IT department for a nuclear industry, and there was loads of downtime. Absolute load. I mean, there was periods of activity where there was like, sometimes it was like days and days and days where you were just non-stop. But there was like quite a bit of period of downtime. So I was always able to just flip into doing my writing while the work was sort of like twirling around in the background, you know what I mean? So it's just something I've always been able to do.
That's a superpower. I am so jealous.
Yeah, but I can't spell. So
right. So this is a question that I ask everybody, but what's most important to you? Is it plot or is it character?
Well, I always think at the start of getting the book, the story together, it's all about plot for me. It's everything about plot. The way I work is I get an idea. Say I'm walking a dog. I'm lucky enough to live by a beach. So we sometimes take the dog for a walk down the beach, and like Lauren, my missus, she'll be like talking to me, and then she'll say, "Did you hear what I just said?" And I'll be like, "What?" And then because I'm not listening, because my brain's me synapses are firing, it's like, and the story's getting down. So what I do then is I get my phone or I get my laptop and I write the story down, start, middle, and end. So at that point, it's all about story. So when I get when I get the first draft, once I've got the first draft and I've got the story down, then I develop my characters. And then it all becomes, once the story's in, it all becomes about characters. So the end, it's a 50-50 for me, basically, but just at different times of the procedure.
Yeah, I think there is a balance that we need between plot and character. But yeah, I like that, and I like the fact that you tied that into sort of like the Aristotelian idea of it being start, middle, and end. Yeah, that's
yeah. Well, that's so important for me, because I'm not a pantser. I don't write by the seat of my pants as such. I've always got the structure. So when I write my story, I do know how it's going to start. I do know where I want to get to, and I know how the ending's going to go. Now, we all know, and you're going to know this, is that the characters can sometimes take a little life of their own and take it off in different tangents and different locations and different places. But I always try to tend to get back to that location where I need to be, and that plot part is the most important part for me. And then So once I've got there in the story, the characters might deviate from me, but I always try to bring them back. Doesn't always happen because, you know, characters can take a life of their own.
Tell me about it. I'm working on a
Yeah.
story at the moment where I had 6 of them sitting around a campfire, and 2 of them have just stood up, fucked off, and gone into a nearby street, and that's not what they were meant to be doing. My whole idea,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, loads of my characters have the audacity to die on me sometimes, and you think to yourself, but you were significant at the end. Why have you died? Well, it is what it is. Yeah.
What piece of writing advice then would you give to anybody who's just starting out?
Right. Okay. So there's a certain science fiction franchise called Star Wars, and there's a sect in this Star Wars called Jedis, and it's spelled Jeddi. Now, my advice to everyone is a little bit like Jedi, but instead of the E, it's got an F, so it's JFDI. You've just got to fucking do it. Do you know, that's nobody is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
If you don't get off your ass and do it, it doesn't get done. That's the biggest thing. You can think about your manuscript, you can think about your story for as long as you want, and you know, you can procrastinate it, and you can try to develop it in your head. But if you're not writing it down, you're never going to do it. It's not going to do itself. So my advice to people is just can do it.
Do you think procrastination is a problem for writers?
I really do. Yeah. And I think it comes down to self-belief, self-consciousness about their writing, about their talents and stuff like that. So I think an awful lot of potential writers who've probably got like some fantastic ideas suffer from procrastination so much that they actually end up in their brain. It becomes too big a task for them to do. So yeah, and I also and a short-term procrastination, because when I'm writing, if I say it's a weekend, or say like it's through the week and I'm on holiday, or you know, I've got a few days off or whatever, and I've got the house to myself. If it's quiet in the house and there's nobody about and I've got the time to do it, that's the time where Facebook jumps out at me, and you know, Wikipedia jumps out at me, and I start like, what's the history of paper, and you know, when did people start putting stuff on shelves? That, I mean, just stupid. But if I'm in a Starbucks or a McDonald's or like a cafe or something like that, and the world's going mad around me, I've got my headphones on, I can write like there's no tomorrow. I can write. I can probably get a novella finished in a day if I'm in that sort of scenario. So there's obviously different types of procrastination, but I think where the old saying is like that everyone's got a book in them, or everyone's got a novel in them. And it's true, you know, people can do it. It can be, you know, everyone can do it. You've just got to do it. No one's going to do it for you. Yeah.
Fully agree with that. Yeah. And I know what you mean about the procrastination. There's times when I'm thinking, right, I can get a couple of 100 words done on this particular story, or should I tell somebody on Twitter that they're wrong?
Oh, you've fallen down that Twitter hole.
God, yeah.
The rabbit hole of,
I need to cancel my Twitter account. It drags me in every time. It's just,
oh mate, yeah, because you read something, and again, the Karen in you goes, oh, I've got to reply to that, and then the next thing you know, it's like 7:30 at night. It gets you so weird that they go, it's the worst thing. I think social media is fabulous. Don't get me wrong. I think social media is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
To a degree. And then I think there's an awful lot of it that just needs setting on fire.
Yeah. There's times when you just sort of like, you're scrolling and you're not doing anything except watching pictures go past. And fully agree.
100%. Yeah.
So on the subject of scrolling, who do you read for pleasure?
Well, I don't get enough and a lot of time to read these days. I do read. I mean, I'm constantly reading, but I don't get as much time to read.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, obviously I fell in love with Stephen King. He was my first, and I think an awful lot of people did.
Yeah.
But then I moved on because I used to love the Stephen King books because they were like, they were set in, all his early doors ones were set in Maine, in over in America, and it was always like magical. It was like a magical place that I'd never been to, and I'd probably never ever were going to ever get there. But then I started reading James Herbert, and James Herbert was set in like grimy London.
Yes.
And I could relate to that. And it wasn't like a glorious fall. It was like pissing down in London, do you know what I mean? And it's like, and so I could really relate to Herbert. And James Herbert to this day still is my favorite author.
Yeah.
But also Neil Gaiman is another one who I absolutely adore. And Brian Lumley, the Necroscope books.
Yep.
Richard Lehman. One Rainy Night was a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Don't know whether you've ever read that one.
Richard Lehman's short stories, Dreadful Tales.
Do you know what, Ash? I'm not a fan of short stories. I like the Stephen King ones, but short stories leave me a little bit cold because I like to immerse myself.
Yeah.
In a whole mythos and a whole getting into these characters. And when the short stories come, I'm thinking, I want more. But yeah. But I haven't read his short stories.
They're well worth dipping into. Yeah, it's
Richard
Lehman, and but then again, anything that he's written is worth dipping into.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah. Have you read that One Rainy Night?
Yeah, I think I have. Actually.
It's about the black rain, and when the black rain falls, it just turns people into psychopaths.
He's fantastic, isn't he? Yeah. Is one of my favorites, and is it Darkness Tells Us?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. He just
and the steak was a good one because the steak was the first time I was ever introduced. But then again, this is going to be #spoiler this. I don't know whether everyone's read it, but it's the first time I ever. If you want to read the steak, don't listen for the next couple of seconds.
Right.
Yeah, it's the first one where you get introduced to a vampire who's not evil.
Genius or what?
Yeah, and that blew my mind when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? It actually did. There's like, because all vampires have always been like, yeah, I'm gonna get you, and I'm the evil one. But then this one wasn't, and you're like, yeah, I get that. I get the warpness.
So I was confusing in my head then the steak with, is it the Traveling Vampire Show?
No, I haven't read the Traveling Vampire Show, but the steak is the one where the fella finds the body of a woman with a stake in her heart, and he's umming and ahhing, and he pulls the stake out, and she comes back alive again, and she's a vampire, but she's actually a good vampire, and she's been staked by other vampires. So it's a good book. Good book.
We're talking about dead writers here, and that's kind of sad, really, isn't it?
Mate, knowing that you're not going to get any more stories out of him, yeah,
it really is. James Herbert, Richard Lehman, at least Stephen King's still alive, so
he's still going. Yeah, I don't know whether he's still. Well, I don't know. I was going to say, I don't know whether he's actually still writing, because some of his books recently have just not. They haven't sounded like him. Do you know what I mean? I just hope he hasn't gone down the James Patterson route.
I think the last couple, I know exactly what you're saying there. I know they don't quite sound like him, but it's almost as though he's moving away from horror and moving into this sort of like thriller area.
Yes, like a little Twilighty, little horror elements to it, but it's more of it. It may well be.
I was saying earlier that there's horror in everything, and the horror in Billy Summers is.
I haven't read that one yet because a lot of people I've read an awful lot of bad reviews for it, but I don't really. I mean, I do listen to reviews and I do read reviews, but I like to make my own judgment. But the reviews I've had for it haven't been quite favourable.
But some people try to get RC because it's Stephen King, and they figure.
Well, there is that as well. Yeah, and people like someone who's on the pedestal, someone who's up there at the top. People love trying to knock them down, don't they?
Yeah, and I've got to admit, Dr. Sleep I didn't particularly enjoy, but
Do you know what? Doctor Sleep is one of them. Books where I actually thought the film was better than the book.
I'm gonna have to go and sit through the film again, aren't I?
Yeah. I really did think the film was much better than the book. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but as a sequel to something as fantastic as
Shining, yeah,
as The Shining, it was. I don't know. It left me a little bit flat, but then the film was excellent.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna have to watch The Shining again because yeah, it's just absolutely right. So
we procrastinate, we digress. Yeah.
Right, so you collaborated with authors such as Tony Bolland, C. William Giles. Do you feel that collaboration requires a different set of skills to those needed for typically sitting down and writing?
Yes, I do. The two collaborations that I've done up to now, we've really set the ground rules at the start. Now, unfortunately, my collaboration with C. William Giles turned out quite tragic because unfortunately he passed away literally about two weeks before we released the book, like completely and utterly like by surprise. It was a shock to everybody. But yeah, so what we've done, what I've done with C. William Giles is we fleshed the whole story out. So the way that worked, I had written a little poem called The Contract, and I had an idea to flesh it out into a comic, into a graphic novel, but I just thought it was one of them that just languished on the shelf. And then I got talking to Craig, and what happened was we just hit it off. He was from Bolton, but he lived in Liverpool, and I knew his girlfriend. And what we've done is we just got on like house on fire straight away. And I just said, you know what, I've got this story. Do you want to have a go at it with us? Because he'd done a lot of heaven and hell type stuff. So he said, yeah, okay. So he read my sort of like manuscript of it, if you know what I mean, like me notes, and he loved it. So I said, what I'll do, and I've done this the same with Tony as well, with Tony Bolland for In the Mood for Murder. I said, what I'll do is I'll write the first draft, right? And then I'll pass it on to you. And then you can write the second draft and make all your notes and stuff like that. And then we'll flesh it through together. We'll talk about it together. Then I'll do a third draft. You do the fourth draft. I'll do the fifth draft. You do the sixth draft. And we were going to chisel the statue from the marble that way. And it worked really well within the Mood for Murder, and it worked really well with the contract because we were going to flip it over. The contract was always meant to be a 3-parter. But we fleshed out the idea, but unfortunately he passed away. So I've written the sequel of the contract, but he was going to write the sequel, and that's the way that was going to work. He was going to write the first draft, then I was going to do the iteration, then he was going to iterate it, then I was going to do, and then we were going to back and forwards like that. So that's the way I like to work on a collaboration. But I know other people like to work on chapters, don't they? And like you do this chapter, you do that.
Who's done that way before? That's fascinating. So what you're getting there then is actually it's not so much collaboration as a conglomeration. Whereas which means that you're getting something completely distinctive, and it's not you and it's not the other writer.
Well, that's it. See, I've read a few collaborations in my time. I'm not going to mention any names because some of them are indie authors, and you could tell distinctively which part that author had written and which part that author had written, and it kind of like you had to change your mindset when you were reading different chapters that the different authors had written because they were written in a different voice. I mean, I'm all about voice when I'm talking about writing and stuff like that. It's I can pick out people's voices. So what I wanted to do with me collaborations is I wanted to have it one single voice, but with different persons' opinions of that voice within the manuscript. If that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Does it make sense?
This is tapping into theories about Barkton and polyphony, and you've actually said that you start off by fleshing the story out.
Yes.
does this actually leave you in a place? Right, so I've got to try and phrase this so that I'm not loading the question, and I've got to try and phrase it so that I understand what the fuck I'm saying. But
this has just come up. They're saying that we've only got 9 minutes left.
Right.
So Zoom is going to kick us out, but we'll just jump back on again if that's all right with that.
Yeah, of course. So my question is going to be, if you're fleshing something out, does that take away all the potential surprises for you when you're about to write something? And is that potentially harmful to your creativity and your enthusiasm for a project?
In answer to the first part, no, it doesn't. I was going to say, I was playing with saying yes then. I was like, yeah, no. Because I do allow an awful lot of flexibility in my stories. So when I flesh them out, yeah, I'll quickly flash it up on the screen. Let me see what I've got here. So when I say I flesh it out, I go into my book ideas here. And I've got, let's say I've got a story called Hysterectomies Are Us. Right. Okay. So it's going to be like an extreme horror. This one's going to be. So I don't know whether you can see that. So what I do is I just write them in my notes on my phone. Can you see that? Yeah.
The text keeps coming in and out.
All right, there you go. Yeah. So I write it in my notes on my phone like that, and that's generally the idea from start to finish about what I'm going to write about. Okay, right. But it is only a general idea. So that I always call that draft 0.5. Yeah. So then when I fleshed that out, that's probably around about 700 words. What I tend to do is I tend to write my first drafts, and they tend to come in around about the length that the final book's going to be. I'll write it as if I'm writing the first, like the actual book, but I will reiterate it a lot of times. So it does give me an awful lot. None of that's written in stone. None of that's a Bible. So I've got plenty of opportunity to actually flip stuff around and exaggerate stuff and elongate stuff and contract stuff and delete stuff. So yes, it does give me a lot of flexibility, and I've completely forgotten what the second part of your question was.
That was it. Yeah. Do you have how does that potential lack of flexibility work for your enthusiasm?
Oh right, okay. Well, yeah, no, but yeah. I mean, my enthusiasm for the book, when I'm writing a book, I'm enthusiastic pretty much all the way through. There's usually around about the 35,000 word mark where I think to myself, oh, I'm dragging this on. But no, I'm usually enthusiastic right the way through, and I love the journey. So when I said before, I don't get an awful lot of time to read as much as I used to. It's because I'm writing a lot of the time. So I'm actually reading in my mind the book that I really want to read because I'm writing it. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. My next question is, one of the things that fascinates me about your work is that you don't limit yourself to a single age range. So Zola and Cravings are both aimed at the mature audiences. Is that a fair way of saying it? Mature Zola, yeah. Whilst The Grinkle Monk and A Seagull's Tale are written for a younger audience. Is there a difference in your approach to writing for these audiences?
Nope, not at all. Just to really to put this out there, The Grinkle Monk isn't for a kids audience. It's written like it's a kids book,
right?
But at and again, it's a hashtag spoiler. So if you're going to read The Grinkle Monk, stop listening now. At the very last page is depraved. So it's a horror book disguising itself as a children's book. And I don't think an awful lot of people have got onto that one. But anyway, but there you go. But no, going back to what you're saying, I don't change my style at all. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, about having a voice, is I just think that what I do is I'm lending my voice to a different genre and to a different age group. So when I'm writing about a group of seagulls who live on a rock and they're terrorizing the seaside town. This is a kid's book, so they're not like terrorizing, you know what I mean? They're going and raiding that town. Is written in the same voice, I think, as the likes of Cravens, which is about a woman who's pregnant, who's got the most horrific craving that you could ever think about in your entire life. So I like to think that the narrative is the same, that the actual way I'm talking to the audience and the voice that I'm using is the same. I'm just lending it to a different age group, a different genre.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and yeah, the importance of voice is something that I think we overlook. It's the one thing that we've all got that we bring to our storytelling, isn't it? The one thing distinctive.
Yeah.
So
it makes it differentiates me from you, and it differentiates you from Stephen King.
I was going to say, yeah. If we both decided to sit down and write a ghost story about a ghost coming out of a computer screen now, even though we've got exactly the same stimulus, it's going to be completely different because we've both got these different voices.
Yeah. And it's not about I don't think it's about like your personality or my personality. I don't actually think it's got anything to do with that. I think it's just the way that you actually think these through. So it's not about, like, I like to write an awful lot of comedy in my books.
Yeah.
But that's because that's the way I think. In a situation, in any given situation, I'm always looking for the comedy in that situation, and I'll try my best to bring the comedy to the likes of these little presentations that we do, and the Zoom messages and the Zoom interviews. I like to bring a bit of comedy and a bit of levity, and I like to put that into my books. But I don't feel that that's what it's all about. I think it's about the way I put it across, and that's my voice. And again, your voice is completely different than my voice, and you've got all these other indie authors who we interact with on a day in, day out basis, and they've all got their own. So you can tell that that's their book, and this one's our book, and that one's your book.
Yeah,
and I like that. And as I say, I try not to change it between my kids' books, my romance books, my psychological thriller books, and my extreme horror books. I try to put the same sort of D E McCluskey tick on them. That makes sense.
Which I like that, and I think that's I think my students are going to get a lot out of that. So following on from the previous question, then, your series The Glimmer Saga is aimed at children aged 12 plus. How much preparation do you do to prepare for a series of novels?
I always find series of novels really, really difficult because I'm not the most organized person in the entire world, right? My missus will tell you. I mean, I've got odd socks on. I don't. The kids are always shouting at me because I wear like a blue t-shirt with black shorts and green trainees, and they'll be like that. You look like you got dressed in the dark, because I'm not an organized person, right? I don't have a desk, for one. And when I did have a desk, it was never organized. But when it comes to writing, I actually am, and it's a bizarre thing. So when I'm writing a series, something like The Glimmer, and I'm writing a series at this moment of time about a supernatural detective. But what you've got to do is you've got to remember, you've got to have a timeline. So again, in my notes on my phone, which syncs to my computer, it syncs into the cloud and stuff like that. I've got the timeline, so I can always go back to figure out who's done what, where, and why, and when. So I've got that sort of that level of organization, because I think it's important, because if you get one thing wrong in book 2, then you can completely cock up book 3, and then book 1 doesn't make any sense because you got that one little thing wrong. So so it's all about timeline, I think, when you're doing a series. Definitely.
I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't even thought about the importance of a timeline. And that's one of those things that I will screw myself over so many times when I'm writing something where I think chapter 1 starting on a Monday, chapter 2, this has happened, chapter 3, and then I think, well, there's only 3 days happened, but there's 4 days worth of stuff.
But there's 4 days, yeah. I actually brought out a comic a few years ago, and it's available on Amazon at the moment, and it's called 3 Days in the City, and he's actually there for 4. And I'm thinking to myself, no one's ever got onto that. And I think I should have called it 4 Days in the City, but 3 days always sounded better. But you're right, you're 100% right, because you get lost. You get lost in that timeline. So that's why it's one of the only things in my entire life where I've got any organization skills, and I'm quite good at doing a timeline for books, because it's all in my notes on my phone. That notes app on your phone and the notes app or sticky notes or whatever, I think is one of the best tools. But for me, as a writer, it's one of the best tools that I've ever utilized. And I've tried all the likes of Scrivener and all the likes of, and First Draft and stuff like that, and I can't get my head around them. So I only use Microsoft Word, and I use my notes app. That's it.
The notes app is just brilliant. I mean, when I first started teaching creative writing, one of the things that you tell people was take a journal with you, take a notepad.
Yes.
But now you don't even need to do that,
You
because
don't need it.
everybody's got a phone with them, and the phones have all got these apps on where we can store information.
Yeah. And it's like having, because I'm like, someone said to me ages ago before, when I was writing comics, and he said, "Oh, have you got a notepad and pencil at the side of your bed?" I was like, "No, I've never really done that. I've never really wrote a book from a dream." But it is the same thing, because if I'm walking, as I say, when I'm walking a dog on the beach or walking a dog around the golf course or whatever, I've got me app. So the brain synapses goes, and I'm like, and that's it. Yeah. Because a lot of my books, a couple of books that I've wrote, they've literally fallen into place from just the most innocuous little thing. Like a woman who was pregnant walked past me one day. I didn't even know her, didn't speak to her, didn't say hello, didn't do nothing. She walked that way, I walked that way. And when I got to the end of 500 yards where my work was, I'd had the novel, and it start, middle, and finish I'd done in my head. So I rushed into my desk in work, and I wrote it down in my notes. And so that's why you need to have that notes app is just fabulous.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just as a side note to that, the whole thing about, I don't dream very much. I will sort of like go to bed and wake up, and nothing's happened in those 8 hours.
Probably a good thing. Yeah.
I did take a pen and paper to bed one night, because somebody said, look, when you wake up, the first things that you write down, you're going to be able to make a note of it, and there will be something that you get there. And in fact, it wasn't that. It was that thing, when you're just dropping off and you have an idea and think, oh, what a great idea.
A little twilight before you actually do fall asleep. I'm with you on that one.
So I'd got pen and paper there and just about to drop off. And instead of the usual, I'll remember it in the morning, I got pen and paper there, got up, wrote the idea down. Next morning, I couldn't make out what the fuck I'd written. No. It was just scribble. Yeah.
I did that same thing once, and I there was something about pyramids and a cat, and then that's it. And it's never ever fell into any of my books, because I just got no idea what I was thinking. I was thinking to myself, I don't even know whether I'd been drinking or anything that night.
Dave, final question for you. What are you currently working on, and where can we find more of your work?
Okay, what I'm working at the moment, I've got about 15 books that are all written. They're all past the first draft.
Right.
So I'm just sort of like reiterating and going through and stuff like that. So I've got about 15 of them on the go. I'm writing, I've just sent to editor my next extreme horror novella, which is called The Special Stuff. And it's about a couple of nasty drunk fellas who take the mickey out of the kebab owner, and the kebab owner gets his revenge.
Nice.
I've got the third part. The second part of the Glimmer saga is coming out next month, and then I'm actually just working on the final iteration of the third part, because that's going to come out in December. So that'll be the full saga will be out in the same year, because I hate a cliffhanger. George A. Martin has done my head in. You know,
when are we going to get? Is it Winds of Winter that? Yeah,
I just hope he can get it, because he's not a very well man, is he? Do you know what I mean? I just hope he get it.
Better than the bloody TV show was, because that.
Well, he approved that, didn't he? He approved the ending of that TV show, and it was all right. It was an all right ending, but it wasn't the ending that anybody wanted, was it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
yeah.
It was.
But then that's not for us to say, is it? Because, like, you know, as authors ourselves, our endings are our endings, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? No one can dictate to us our ending.
Yeah, but one of the good things about a novel is you can sort of like come away from it and you can say, well, I fucking hated that ending, and if I'm the author, I'm going to tell them that. Yeah.
I got a lot of that for my book In the Mood for Murder, which I wrote with Tony Bolland, because it's got a really nasty character in it called George Hogg, and the ending, everyone was like, there was no justice in the ending of that book. And I'm like that.
Yeah. And I can imagine George R.R. Martin sort of like saying that to us too as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's like that. Yeah, it's mine. So, yeah. I've also just finished the first draft on a mainstream horror, ghost. It's kind of I've always loved to do. One of my favorite genres of novel is haunted house. I love haunted house, spooky. There's a lady author who I know really well, Catherine Cavendish, and she does spooky really, really well. So I've just done one called that's the Old Reap House. So that's just finished. And I've just fleshed out, and I'm really excited to do it. But I've got a couple of other projects I need to do beforehand. But I've just fleshed out an idea for a psychological thriller called Other Than by Descent. And I'm when you've got like tingles in your stomach over a project that you want to get out and you want to get done.
Yes.
But I've got a few little projects that I'm doing. I'm bringing out a book of it's not poetry. I wanna make sure that everybody knows it's not poetry.
Right.
I'm bringing out a book of 13 rhyming stories. They're not poetry, because I think when people say, "Oh, I'm bringing out a poetry book," they're like, "Oh yes, well, it's going to be very arty-farty. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be loads of long words," and there's no long words in it. It's just rhyming stories, but some of them are funny, some of them are quite sad, some of them are horror. But that's coming out. That'll be coming out. I think that's going to be coming out January or something like that. That's called Guardian. Yeah. So I've got loads of projects on it to go at the moment, and you know, if anybody wanted to get onto any of my information or any of my books or anything, I'm all over. I mean, as you know, I'm all over Facebook on a constant basis. That's because I hate my job so much. So I just think to myself, what rubbish can I throw up on Facebook today? I'm on Twitter, but unless you just want to read about my political rants, which I have no idea about, I'm just ranting because I don't like the Tory government. Obviously I'm a Scouser. I'm all over that. I'm on Instagram. I don't really know what I'm doing on Instagram. My daughters keep telling me that they're going to show me how to use Instagram, and none of them have. I'm not on TikTok because I don't have a face for TikTok.
TikTok scares the hell out of me.
Apparently, you've got to be gorgeous to be on TikTok, and
every time I try opening the app, it's just sort of like 15 minutes worth of videos thrown at me, and it's just, what the hell? Yeah, it's like,
everyone's a comedian now, aren't they? Everyone's dead funny on TikTok, and it's like, it's just a little bit boring, to be fair. But the kids love it.
Right.
So yeah, I've got a website as well. My website is www.damaged.com. Damage is spelled with a double M. and it's not. It's on purpose. It's not a spelling mistake. Yeah, I mean, I'm a terrible speller, but I would have spell checked that, honest.
Right, all those links will be down below anyway.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, Dave, thank you so much. That's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, Ash, listen, honestly, God, mate, I love doing stuff like this, and it's actually great to interact with you in real life.
Likewise.
Because as I say, we're all on Facebook, and like there's a nice community going on, that Books of Horror group and stuff, isn't there?
Yeah.
And you interact with people all the time, but you never actually see them face to face or nothing like that. So, Ash, it's been great.
If you
ever need anything else, if you ever want me, friend, just give me a shout, and I'm always there. I've got no life. Don't do anything else.
Thank you.